Welcome to AP Workshops. Welcome to our interview that we've got with one of the representatives from Motul Oils. We are hoping, in this particular instance, to answer all your oil questions. AP Workshops, and thank you very much for joining us once again. Hopefully we are going to answer your oil questions. This is Tom from Motul. He's kindly volunteered to come and give us a little bit of information, fill us in with the detail, give us the facts. There seems to be the oil discussion on forums and Facebook pages seems to be a little bit of a hot potato. So what we're going to do hopefully is put to bed and put to rest some of the questions that we've been asked. So earlier on in the week we actually asked if there was any questions that you guys had that we could help you with. So after hours and hours of trawling through these questions, because basically they all seem to be sort of pointing in the same direction, but after hours and hours of sort of trawling through these questions, we've come up with kind of like a couple here to kind of that sort of answer excuse me, the whole sort of sort of general idea of it. So Tom, thanks very much for joining us, mate. I really appreciate it. This all sounds really official, but thanks, man. I really appreciate it. So I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to ask you in the first instance, which hopefully we'll be able to sort of inform the basics in the first instance, like I said. So so we've got 10 questions plus an extra just in case, but you know, keep it simple, effectively if you can, just to make sure that we can get to everyone on this one. But so the first question: what is the primary function of oil in an engine?
Okay, well, an oil basically it's essentially just a lubricant. So it's in the engine. It's there to lubricate the moving parts, because the last thing you want is metal on metal, because then we cause damage. It's there, so its primary function is there to lubricate, but it also seals. It cools the engine as well, so it's like a cooling agent, which is then...
If you look back in history, basically, oil-cooled engines up in sort of early 90s, that's how they were air and oil-cooled, weren't they?
So absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And like you say, you go back in history, but then the actual... If you drilled into the bones of it, we're not actually we haven't advanced that much. You know,
there's still oil coolers on bikes.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool engines.
Some Hondas have even got water-cooled oil coolers, haven't they?
Absolutely.
So absolutely, yeah, brilliant, nice one. So next question then: can you explain what oil viscosity is? Because everybody's heard of this term viscosity, and everybody's sort of seen it, and everybody bounces it around and stuff like that. But what is viscosity?
Okay. Well, viscosity is a term that can relate back to any fluid or any liquid. You know, water has viscous properties, as does honey, or indeed engine oil. The viscosity in engine oil, it relates back to, as in any fluid, it relates to how thick and how the thickness of the properties of a lubricant. So engine oil comes in many different shapes and forms, and there's lots and lots of different viscosities. So you'll have like your 540s, your 530s, all the way up to like the 2050 for your Harley Davidsons, and then it's all just determined. The viscosity just basically tells us how thick the oil is, both at cold temperatures and at warm temperatures.
Excellent, can't argue with that. Keeping it nice and simple, excellent. So this is the one thing that a lot of people don't get. This is the one people don't believe you when you say it, but if you see it, you see in your oil viscosity. We've got it written down here, just here, so you can see what's going on. 15W50. So tell me, mate, what does the W stand for? Because nobody believes me, so I need it from the horse's mouth.
Common misconception, and where everybody gets tripped up, is that it stands for weight.
Yeah.
15 weight 50, 10 weight 40. Where it comes from is it's actually an old Americanism.
Okay.
So it's derived from the old whaling industry, if you like, crude oil. So it's how the Americans used to look at the viscosity of oil, basically, how heavy it is and how thick it is.
Yeah.
Whereas the actual terminology, it's for winter.
Winter is coming.
So the W stands for winter.
Winter, yeah.
Winter is coming.
So,
ideal.
So when you're breaking down the viscosity of an oil, so for instance, we've got 300V, 15 winter 50 on the table here. So if we take a look at our viscosity chart
Here's one we prepared earlier.
Yes, bit of a blue pizza moment. Oh, there we go. So we're looking here, we've got our 1530 here, 1050, 1040, 1030 and so on and so forth. So 1550 would be just under this one here, but for all intents and purposes, the most common oil that we're going to come across in any workshop looking down the country is going to be a 1040.
Yep.
So we've got 1040 here. So we've got 10 winter. So as you can see, the temperature range of the cold viscosity, so the starting temperature of the engine, so the temperature ranges from minus 30 degrees right up until 0 degrees. So, and then we've got 40, which is our summer temperature of the viscosity. So the oil goes from 0 degrees right up to 40 degrees plus.
Perfect. Keeping it simple, keeping it lovely. I love that kind of thing. Absolutely excellent. So we'll probably refer back to that chart again in a little while. No questions on that one, because I like that. That is brilliant. That's a visual representation. So at this particular point, we're going to cut to a static, cut to a film of this particular chart so we can see what's going on. Okay, after that, now then, we have got some questions. Like I said, a couple of days ago I asked people to put some questions together. Let's see what we can find out. So I'm going to name those people that have sent these questions out because I'm going to give them a name check because they bothered to answer my questions. And thank you very much for everything. So first question came from Alex Wazinski. Thank you, Al. I really appreciate you, mate. His question was 300V or 7100 Motul for V4 application for a road use. What's your feelings on that one, mate?
Both of them are applicable because the V4 is such a specific engine for what it does. Whether it be in the RSV4 or in the Tuono, it's quite a highly tuned, refined engine. So the best thing that you can do is use a high quality, fully synthetic oil for it, of which 300V and 700 are. Ultimately, it comes down to budget. So, you know, 300V could retail anywhere between stuff.
Can't even work on that. So, okay, and we'll cut that one. So, right. So earlier on in the week, we asked for a few questions from you guys on in the virtual Facebook and forum world. We asked for some questions to see that you could put to Tom to see what we could do and sort of perhaps put some of these common misconceptions to bed. So. I'm going to name check you as well. Alex Wazinski, thank you very much, Al. I really appreciate you, mate. He's asked 300V or 7100 for V4 application road use.
Okay. Essentially, you can use both.
Okay.
The thing with the V4 engine in the Aprilias is because it's such a highly refined engine and it's such a, you know, the engine type that it is. I mean, the RSV4 was made to go racing essentially, and then they've obviously put it into the Tuono as well. But the key ingredient there is that you use a really good quality, high grade, fully synthetic, of which 300V and 700 are both.
Yeah.
Ultimately, between the two, it comes down to budget.
Okay.
Really, that's the bones of it.
Yeah.
300V can retail anywhere from 65 to 75 pounds, depending on where you go. 700 is a little bit less than that, and then it's all about personal preference.
No props. Thanks very much for that. Thanks very much, Al. I really appreciate your questions. Chris Jevons, which grades to use, fully synthetic or semi, and what's the difference between the two? So, what's the situation with grades? Where does that sit with let's just say for the V-twin application, because obviously there's and again this is a bit of a hot potato. There's a 1550 reads in the manual. We've kind of had a few conversations with people in the past about what we actually recommend in this country. So Chris has done it for us and said which grade to use in a V-twin application, fully synthetic or semi-synthetic, and what's the difference between. Tell you what, let's start. What's the difference between a fully synthetic and a semi-synthetic?
Okay, right. With Motul, so you can take the standard semi-synthetic, which is your 5000 1040. And then you've got your 300V at the top of the tree. So essentially the base stock oil of what they're made up of, it's an ester-based base stock oil. So they're both, the base stock remains the same. The difference then becomes in the additive pack which is used between a fully synthetic and a semi-synthetic, and then the last little ingredient in a semi-synthetic is there's a whiff or a hint of mineral oil.
Right.
So if you break it down, you've got a bottle of 300V, so you'll have 70% of it will be your ester-based base stock oil, and then 30% will be your additive pack.
Yep.
Then in 7100, you'll have an 80% base stock oil, and then a 20% additive pack. So you can see how the two there may differ in their composition. Then on the 5000, you'll have a 70% base stock, you'll have a 20% additive pack, and then you'll have a 10% mineral. So then that shows you, then using those percentages, it shows you the difference between the semi-synthetic and the fully synthetic.
Boom, nice one, man. And basically, how do we work out which grades to use?
So referring back to our viscosity chart here, so Aprilia, you go back to Gen 1 millis, and then of course Gen 2 and the V-twins and the V-twin engine, coming out of Italy. So within the book, Chris,
15,
Chris is right.
yeah.
So it's 1550 in the book. Basically, it's all done because of, obviously, Aprilia being an Italian brand, Italian manufacturers, their ambient temperature outside is a lot warmer than here in the UK. So obviously in a warmer climate, on a cold start in the morning, your oil can be a little bit thicker because it takes less cranking amperage of the battery, less turnover in the engine, so then it can start as normal. So if you look at your 1530, for instance, so you've got a cold start temperature in the morning of minus 25 degrees.
That's bloody cold.
Which, it gets to Russia, but not definitely not in Italy.
Certainly not in Italy, and certainly not in the UK.
Exactly, yeah. So this is why in the UK it's more than safe and more than adequate to use 1040, because the ambient temperature, even in winter, the ambient temperature outside is a lot cooler than what you find in Italy. So going from a 15 winter down to a 10 winter oil just gives you that little bit extra, that little bit of a thinner oil on a cold start, just to make it easier for the engine to turn over.
So I'm just going to interrupt you there just for a second, because the next question was Dash Patterson, my mate Dash. He's a cool cat, he is definitely a man, but he's from Oz, and they've got a slightly different climate over there, clearly. So Dash, thanks mate, I really appreciate you. Basically, he said Aprilia recommend a 5W40 for the V4, but here in Oz, conditions are different. I've used a 1550 and the cam chain noise seems less. He wants to know your opinion on that. I've got to be honest, whereabouts in Oz are we from? Because I think there's quite a difference, isn't there? From what I can gather in Oz, it's a bloody big place, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. My thoughts to that one would be, as he started using the 1550 fully synthetic, I presume, 300V for instance, the reason why the cam chain noise is less on the engine is because there's a thicker oil going in and around and doing its magic in the engine. Because obviously a 540, once it's up to temperature, it's quite, I mean, even at a cold start, it's quite a thin oil. Yeah. This is why in the car industry, the car industry now has moved right towards like a 030. Yeah. And Suzuki, for instance, are using 020 oils now. Yeah. So a zero, if you bring it down up here as well, so you look at 030 oil, I mean, that's got a cold starting temperature of minus 40 degrees. So
I ain't going nowhere on a bike at that temperature, for Christ's sake.
Exactly. So, that's why, in my opinion, the cam chain noise would be less in the engine, because there's effectively when the engine is up to temperature with a thicker oil, there's more oil for the engine to circulate.
Makes sense. Thanks very much, Dash. I really appreciate you, mate. Good to hear from you, and thank you very much for being a little bit a part of it. Then we've got a question, effectively. That this is a bit of a leading one as it goes, I think, but we've got two guys, Alan Taylor, Enrique Cunha, my friend Enrique. I hope you're safe, mate. Thank you very much for everything that you've done for us in the past. I really appreciate it, and thanks for asking the questions. He said, so there are approximately 700 oil refineries in the world. What makes Motul better than the rest? Christ.
Right, history time.
History time.
So, I mean, I agree with what they're essentially trying to say. There's so many oil refineries in the world. What makes Motul stand out? And I mean, I've used that argument to a point in the past myself as well. Yeah. At the end of the day, oil comes out of the ground, or the crude oil side of it, and then it's the refineries or the factories or the brands, as in Motul, that then work their magic to make the product as to what it is. The thing about Motul is that Motul was actually founded in 1853. In New York, and it was part of the Swan and Finch company. Right. So Motul was actually a brand invented by a New York oil company, and their business was in crude oil in the whaling industry. Then fast forwards to roughly around about 1920, 1922, a guy by the name of Ernst Zorg, Mr. Zorg.
This really is a history lesson, isn't it?
Zorg,
I am learning stuff. This is great.
Based out of, he's a Franco-Swiss businessman.
Yeah.
He gained the rights to distribute Motul around France in the 1920s. Moved it over into France, into Aubervilliers, just outside Paris.
Yeah.
And then that's when it came to Europe, and then that's when it started to evolve. Fast forward another 20 years, you get into 1953, and then Motul released 2100 Century, which was the world's first multi-grade semi-synthetic oil.
The world's first?
The world's first, yeah. So already you can see that Motul is one of those companies which has always been at the forefront and have always been evolving and reinventing itself. So going from crude oil and the whaling industry to then being able to produce the world's first multi-grade oil. Fast forward then another 10 years up into the 60s, then Motul came about. They were already in motorsport at this point, so then to celebrate 300 victories in motorsport, they released 300V.
Oh, that's where it comes from.
So that's what 300V.
Every day is a school day, man, thank you.
So there you go, and then 300V competition, as it was the world's first fully synthetic oil.
Boom, that'll do nicely. Steve Davis, thanks very much, Steve. He's a great contributor to our Facebook page. Thank you very much, mate. He's got a really relevant question. Is there a shelf life on engine oil?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain?
So yeah, if you pick up a bottle of, it should be on any bottle as well, just note on Motul. So at the bottom here, you've got a little laser stamped date. So this is the date of manufacture. So this is when it got bottled and capped and then sealed away. So you use this date, and then generally Motul would advise 5 years as a shelf life use.
Okay, nice and easy. Julian Chokni, I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name, but that's how you write it out. So Julian, thanks very much for getting in touch. It says, do I need to run 15W50, or is it that for countries with a higher ambient temperature, I am safe to use a 10W40 in UK? I'm assuming he's talking about the V-twin product again. So, do I need to run a 1550, or is that just for a company with countries with higher ambient temperature? And am I safe to use a 1040 in the UK?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. There you go. Simple, succinct. There's your answer on that one. Thank you very much. Mike Dunstall, thanks very much, Mike. I really appreciate you. So, why does engine oil have 2 numbers and fork oil only have 1?
Okay. So essentially because an engine oil is a multi-grade product, and it requires 2 different temperature ranges.
Yeah.
For the hot and for the cold.
So when it starts up, it requires a different viscosity for when it's warm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then fork oil is it's a single grade oil, if you like. It's essentially you could look at fork oil as a hydraulic fluid. So it's only really applicable. It's like if you look back into like mineral oil as well, you'll find that you've got SAE 30s and SAE 40s. They're single grade mineral based oils. So it's all to do with just the cold starting temperature, and then what you see.
I've got an opinion on this one, and I don't know if let me run this by you. But basically, fork oil needs to give a consistent operation throughout its entire working life. Working time when it's being used, so it doesn't need to change. So effectively, if the oil went thinner on your forks while you were using it, the suspension's characteristics would change.
Yeah.
So it needs to be a monograde rather than a dual or a multi-grade, which is what these are. So fork oil is a single grade, a monograde oil, rather than a sort of like a multi-grade, like I said, because it needs to be a consistent operation.
Yes.
There you go.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Right, that's it. That's all we've got time for. Thanks very much for joining us, Tom, mate. COVID-19 safe. Thanks very much. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. If you need to get in touch with us, get in touch with us at the shop. You can email us sales@apworkshops.co.uk. You can ring us at the office, speak to Snox and myself. You take care of yourself, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks very much.